Hello gamers, in this video we're going to be going over some tips and tricks for every projectile DPS hero. If you haven't already, make sure that you check out the other video we did for hit scan DPS where we covered the heroes that we won't in this video. But before we get into the video, make sure that you go over to the GameLeap website right now and sign up. We have tons of different guides for all different heroes where we have new ones coming out every single day. So make sure that you go over there right now so you can start ranking up today. With Echo, your sticky bombs are going to be a huge burst of damage. And every single time that you have that off cooldown, you should be looking to get a pick on an enemy. You could shoot out 6 total bombs, each dealing 30 damage. And if you land all 6 on a target, it will deal a total of 180 damage. Not only is this incredible for bursting down tanks, but if you can land up to 3 or even 4 shots on an enemy support or DPS, chances are they're going to be super easy to finish off. Most of the time though, you're not going to be landing all of the sticky bombs on an enemy, as it's really difficult to hit all of them unless the target is either very close or standing perfectly still. A really great tip is either flying above an enemy or using your flight ability to burst at an enemy and then using your sticky bombs flying towards them so that you can land as many as you can. And if you can hit 2 to 3 sticky bombs, immediately use your beam as they start exploding. Your focusing beam has a special property where it will deal 4 times the damage on targets that are below 50% HP. So even if you land only 2 or 3 sticky bombs, that'll be enough to get them towards half HP, and then as your beam deals damage, as soon as they hit that half HP mark, they are going to melt. Speaking of her beam, focusing tanks can actually be a really good idea for Echo. With your sticky bombs being super easy to land on most tanks and you being able to fly over Reinhardt's shields or even bursting through D.Va's defense matrix with your beam, all you really have to do is start focusing the tank after you notice them using one of their defensive abilities, or maybe Reinhardt's shield is getting low. You could start spamming them down with your sticky bombs and your primary fire, and as soon as they get near half health, use that beam to easily finish them off. Pharah is the other flying hero on this list, and she is going to actually have a very different playstyle than Echo. With Echo, you are allowed to get much closer to the enemies than Pharah should be. Pharah is really great at spamming out enemies from long range, but she can get a little bit closer to enemies whenever she's ready to burst them down. For example, if somebody is on the high ground, she kind of has to get close to them because sometimes the ceilings are too low. An easy way to get a ton of extra height with your jump jet ability is if you shoot your primary fire into the ground right as you use your jump jet, it will send you a lot higher up than you normally would. This is a really easy way to also permanently stay in the air. You could permanently stay in the air by just tapping the jump button every second or two instead of holding it down. And this will make you bounce around in the air, dropping height just a little bit every single time. But if you use that first tip I gave you, then you can easily be way high enough so that once you are close enough to the ground, you can use your jump jets again and repeat the process. You never want to be touching the ground as Pharah. Once you get really good at staying in the air permanently, you can start playing around cover in the air. A lot of maps have tall buildings and ways that you can position around these buildings or above them so that you can easily use them as cover even when playing against hit scan heroes that can easily snipe you out of the sky. A great tip for using Pharah's ultimate is flying above the enemies really high up and then just silently dropping directly above them so that you're maybe 5 or 10 meters above, and then using your primary fire right before you use your ultimate to get a huge burst of damage on whichever target you're aiming at, which will help you finish them off much quicker. With Genji, you want to really master 180ing and hit those dash combos. The dash combo is simple as dashing through an enemy, doing a quick 180, and then using your secondary burst fire combined with a melee at the very same time to deal massive damage in very short periods of time. This combo is really best combined by abusing his double jump and wall climb. As soon as you finish the combo, you can double jump over the enemy, so as they turn around, you're going to be above them and then on the opposite side. This is a really simple way to dodge a lot of damage or finish off the target that you're fighting a lot easier, because as you're jumping over them, you have free access to their head, which is, on top of their head. When you're about to use your Dragon Blade, since it resets your dash cooldown, you can either choose to dash through an enemy support or DPS, then double jump over them while you're using your Dragon Blade so that you can finish them off quicker with 1 slash and a dash instead of 2 slashes. Or you can use it to dash into the air above the enemies to get a better overview of the fight before you pick a target to dash on. With your ultimate, you really want to have a target in mind that you're going to go for before you use it so that you're not panicking and looking for a target as you're either falling or as you're going for your ultimate. As a Genji player, you usually want to be trying to focus down the enemy supports either mid-fight or a little bit before the fight starts. You could start distracting them and then try and get some good shurikens in while they are distracted, and if they're not looking at each other, you can easily go for a kill on one of them. You don't want to just use your dash to finish them off, you want to try and use your dash to get a big damage in and then finish them off with your shurikens before the other support goes in. Hanzo is the long-range sniper of the projectile heroes. Even though he can be used from a long range, it's usually a lot harder to land shots like this, so you usually want to get up into the short to medium range so that you can more easily land shots. One great way to land shots really easily is your positioning. If you position so that only 1 or 2 enemies are on your screen at a time, it can be a lot easier to pick out targets. But if all 5 enemies are on your screen, you can get kind of panicked with which one to target, and with all that movement on your screen, it's going to be a lot harder to track just one hero. Another benefit of having only 1 enemy in your sights at a time is that any time they either come towards you or back away from you, you have a straight shot so that they're either always in your crosshairs, or anytime they pass in front of it, you should be able to get an easy shot. You can also bait enemies into following you into a smaller room or a hallway where they don't have much room to dodge around. This can be a super easy way to use your storm arrows, as they will bounce off the walls as well, possibly landing you some free damage. Your radar arrow is very useful at killing enemies that are coming around corners or from spawn. Try not to just waste your radar arrow at the very start of the fight, and think about where the enemies might be hiding or where the supports are around a corner, so that when you're about to use it, the enemies are going to walk around a corner and you'll be able to line your shot up as they're walking and not really thinking. Similar to Genji, you always want to be seeking high grounds, using your wall climb to gain the positioning advantage over the enemy team. You can also use your lunge in combination with your wall climb to easily dodge enemies and thwart dives. Being above enemies is a really great way to see over the enemy tank and easily pick off the enemy supports that aren't really thinking or looking above them. As Junkrat, you can start positioning yourself in small rooms that face the enemies and set up your trap there so that you can easily deny space in the choke point. The easiest way to think about this is on King's Row first point, the small room next to the first point is a really great Junkrat spot. In this room, there's only 1 entrance facing the enemy's choke point that they have to get to the point with, and there are 2 exits. Not only that, but since there's only 1 entrance, he can easily set his trap down right next to the entrance and then immediately back away if anybody pushes him. Not only that, but he can slowly back away while shooting his grenades at that only entrance, and if anybody comes in, they're pretty much as good as dead. You should be trying to look for spots like this on every single map, but make sure that there are at least exits that lead towards your team. I see a lot of people trying to flank as Junkrat, and it's not really that good of an idea. You want to be trying to play similar to Hanzo, where you are either allowing enemies to come down long lanes where you can just spam corners as they come around it, or you can try and bait enemies into coming towards you by denying a lot of space, like in that small room. Another thing about Junkrat is you should constantly be replacing your trap if you're repositioning. You shouldn't just throw it down in a spot and then leave it there unless you're using it to watch the flank for like a Tracer or Genji. His concussive mines are also a great way of repositioning as well as dealing damage. You should be using these to either reposition mid-fight and saving at least one of them if the enemy is playing dive so that you have a get out of jail free card. What you can actually do is throw a concussive mine on the ground before the enemies dive you and have one recharging while that one is on the ground. Then, if you use that one to escape, you will have 2 concussive mines to deal damage with or to further escape with. And lastly, Junkrat's Riptire can actually climb walls like Hanzo. You should be using this ability to climb all the way up onto the top of tall buildings and then drop directly down onto the enemy's heads. Mei is a great frontline brawler. You should be using Mei's wall ability to try to either block off the enemy support's line of sight or walling enemies that are directly in front of you from escaping. Combined with your primary fire, you can easily melt anyone that's not a tank. and even tanks can be quickly finished off with some help from teammates. Before the fight starts, or if you aren't able to get near enemies, make sure you're always spamming your icicle from a range, as they can easily 2 or 3 shot enemy supports in DPS. When you're looking to use your ultimate as Mei, make sure that you're combining it with your wall and your primary fire so that you can stop enemies from escaping. Symmetra has a really cool thing where she can throw all of her turrets down in one spot, then she can put her teleporter down right on top of those turrets and send them all at once. This is a really great way of bursting down enemy supports in DPS. You can set down all 3 of your turrets, place your teleporter down, and charge up a right click right before you go through to burst down anybody on the other side super quickly. One thing you guys might not have known is that her primary fire actually charges up the longer that you use it. It can deal up to 180 DPS, which is more than a fully charged Zarya. So if the enemy has a shield tank or just about any tank in the game, you should be trying to charge your beam up on them, and as soon as it gets fully charged, you can do that teleport tactic, but instead of using your turrets, this time you are the turret. Although you can throw some turrets with it, it's a lot faster to just put down your teleporter instantly, go to the enemy's backline with that high charge, and try to kill these supports. With Torbjorn, turret placement can be very important. It's super easy to just throw your turret where the enemies can see as they approach to get a little bit of damage on them, but it's likely going to be destroyed by any long-range DPS or support on the enemy team. The best way to actually use your turret is to make sure that when the enemies push an objective, the turret has line of sight on where they push. Or if the enemy's playing dive, it is far enough back so that when the enemies dive you as Torbjorn, your turret will be shooting at the enemies, but it won't be within distance of the enemies quickly breaking it. A great example of this is on First Point King's Row. The large hotel behind the defender's first point has some windows which you can throw your turret in it. And if you throw it either behind the hotel on the low ground or up on the high ground in the window, it only has line of sight of the objective. And right there, it can easily wreak havoc on the enemies as they're fighting your team while they don't have enough resources to actually break the turret since they're busy fighting you. One great thing you can do against dive as well is saving your overload ability. It gives you 100 extra health, so it's very useful against dive, and it can easily save your life in a pinch. Make sure that you're always saving it whenever the enemy's playing Monkey or Diva or Genji, so that whenever they dive you, you can easily turn the fight around. With Torbjorn's ultimate, you want to be using your primary fire lightly. You don't want to just hold it down and blow your whole load instantly. Try and shoot a few globs on the choke point as well as any escape routes that the enemies might have. But you also want to shoot it directly at your feet, especially if the enemies are going to push you whenever you use your ultimate. And that is all I have for today, guys. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.